Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish, a podcast dedicated to transforming disabilities into special abilities. I'm your host, Brady Murray. Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish. It is my pleasure to introduce our amazing guest today, Jennie Dopp. Jennie is a dear friend of mine. In fact, this episode is very different than the past episodes that I've done because Jennie is not only a friend, but she's also a coworker and a partner in a very important company and a special company that we have created together. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different because we're going to share a little bit on our stories and how we came together as friends and as business partners to be able to create something that I believe our listeners are going to be very excited about. So Jennie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. We've tried to get this on the calendar for a while, and we're both just so engaged in what we're doing. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute, and I think the timing is perfect right now with some of the successes that we're seeing with the families that we are serving and just the progress that is being made. And so let me give a little bit of background. So Jennie and I have created a company called CaringTide. The purpose of CaringTide is to be able to serve families that are entrusted with a loved one that has a disability. And so we want to share a little bit about our story and also share about what it is that we do and how we help these families. So Jennie, would you be open to sharing about your own personal journey?
Sure. So my journey started about 24 years ago. So I have 4 children. My oldest is about 27 and my youngest is 18. And right in the middle is my 24-year-old Jackson. And when I was going to the doctor, for those ultrasounds when I was pregnant with him, about 5 months in, we identified that there were some brain structure anomalies. And we thought, okay, this is maybe going to be developmental delay. We weren't quite sure. We knew there was some fluid around ventricles in the brain. And so we knew it would be either a mild case of hydrocephalus or delayed development. So sure enough, 2 days after emergency C-section was our first specialist appointment, and we just have never stopped in this marathon ever since. When he was about 8 years old, after they mapped the genome, we finally were able to get a diagnosis. And so between birth and 8 years old, it was intense. There was a lot of behavior, there were a lot of specialist appointments, a lot of genetic testing, a lot of OT, PT, speech, all the things that go into the world of disabilities. But once we finally had that diagnosis, I remember the day. I was with my sisters at a sister's weekend, and the geneticist, the office called and said, "We have your test results." And just to get the results after months of, fighting with insurance and trying to go through the appeals process. This is back when autism wasn't really even a covered diagnosis.
Right.
So we're talking pioneer, for autism diagnosis. And he just said, I'm so sorry to tell you, we have a diagnosis. We found some discrepancies in the DNA. And I was thrilled as a mom because I finally had an answer. This wasn't just in my head. This wasn't me just being a bad mom, not being able to navigate this world. And so we had the diagnosis of 7q11.23 duplication. And he said, we don't name syndromes anymore. It's just the location of the gene. And so we wrapped our head around that. And he just said, you're the first we've seen in Utah. And we think there's about 11 in the world. And he gave me one sheet of paper from, a research paper out of UNLV. And he said, basically, good luck. He was there for me, but he didn't have any answers for me. And so I never really felt like we could fit in a certain disability mom's group or no, there wasn't anything. And so we really were at the forefront of that. So through an organization out of the UK called Unique, they help families who are diagnosed with rare chromosome disorders. I was able to connect with 2 or 3 other moms, and we started this little support group, and that turned into a nonprofit from another mom who started that, and I was the executive director for that for about 10 years. And just helped families try to navigate this by connecting them with researchers at NIH and hosting conferences. It was a global nonprofit, and it just really turned into this mission of trying to help families because I didn't want other moms to have to go through what I went through. of just doctors telling you, oh, it's just delayed development, it'll grow out of it, or meaningful friends and family saying, oh, don't worry, my kids do that too. And it
Yeah.
just doesn't help you feel validated in the struggle when you're literally white knuckling it every day, trying to figure out how to help this little guy achieve this wonderful life he's supposed to live when we can barely get through the day without some significant challenges. So that's a
That
little bit about me.
that must have been such a lonely place. I know, when we entered into the disability community and we found out that Nash has Down syndrome, I mean, we had parents and family and friends and everybody who had some connection to Down syndrome was reaching out and saying, like, welcome to the community and sharing their point of reference. But you truly were on an island.
We were, and it was kind of funny because we didn't even really fit totally in the 7Q world because there were these extra pieces with the behavior and some of the communication and the rigidity. And so finally, once we had enough communication there, we were finally able to get an autism diagnosis on top of the 7Q, as well as ADHD and anxiety and depression. And I also have to mention this journey isn't just mine alone as a parent, as a mom. It really has been a journey for our family. And that's another reason why I'm so passionate about this mission of ours that we've created is because it's not just about the child with a special health care need or a disability. There's really a journey for each of the siblings as well as your partner in life because a lot of families end in divorce because it's so intense and there's so much to navigate. And a lot of it falls on one parent as the caregiver, unless there's that shared mental load, which I'm passionate about, making sure that
Yeah.
both partners have an equal load to carry. And load can be a positive or a negative, right? Because our family's been on a journey where we can just be in the grocery store and we see someone who's neurodivergent and we're like, we're your people, we get you, and there's just so much compassion and automatic love for anyone that we identify as on this journey with us because there's so many of us that have these invisible disabilities. Like I love Nash and Cooper when I'm around them and I see them, but our journey's been a little bit different because
For
all of
sure.
our disability journey has been mostly invisible unless people are around us for, a minute and then they can kind of see that something's a little off. But the journey's also impacted our other children with things like anxiety and ADHD and also some PTSD, to be honest. There's some chronic or complex PTSD where we can hear a sound, a tone, and it automatically takes you back
Yeah.
to there's going to be a meltdown.
Yeah.
And the family over the years has kind of walked on eggshells because we've had to anticipate it. There's that movie Rain Man,
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman and Tom
Yeah.
Cruise, and there's this minute that where Dustin Hoffman, who has autism, will be 5 minutes to Wapner unless he can watch the People's Court. And
Yeah.
we've kind of joked about that over the years because we see the volcano building, 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 almost ready to erupt, and it's 5 minutes to Wapner. And so we all have had to navigate that, and it's taken a toll on every member of the family. And I'm passionate about making sure that their needs are met because it's not just all about the one child. It has to be about the family unit. And when each member of the family has their needs met, you can be a stronger, cohesive group and help every single person try to achieve their goals.
Yeah, that's something that I personally have learned from Jenny and in just gaining tremendous empathy for families in our community that are on this disability journey. I have to be honest, my personal journey has been a little bit of rose-colored glasses because Nash and Coop have been just very loving and kind, and there are no meltdowns. They are by far our easiest children. Like they just are go with the flow, happy-go-lucky, always ready to give you a hug. And I know that that is not everybody's experience. And so working with Jenny and just really understanding and gaining a great and profound respect for her and her family, her entire family, as they go about this together and love Jackson and be able to give him the best life that they can while also trying to sing that song they're meant to sing as well. So that's been a beautiful part of this journey. So, Jenny, you obviously have tremendous experience with the personal side. I mean, you've lived this for a couple of decades now, but the thing that what really brought us together was actually your background professionally. And so can you share about how you have engaged in the disability community on a professional level?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I worked for Duplication Cares for about 10 years as the executive director, and that was so rewarding because I would find these parents with a brand new diagnosis. Well, they would find us, and I would start connecting them to resources, and they were just at the beginning of their journey of, we're having meltdowns. Does anyone know what's happening? What's the best language component to use as far as working with our speech therapist, because there's different protocols and things for our specific diagnosis that families can use to really help move that needle further along. And so that was very rewarding, putting together a national conference, connecting families with researchers across the country at Stanford and NIH, and just trying to help them find what I like to call their next right step. Because it's so overwhelming when you're in the day to day and you're trying to manage insurance and IEPs and specialists and doctor's appointments, not to mention trying to get everybody to baseball and dance lessons and soccer. So there's that piece of it. And then I worked in that position for, like I said, 10 years. And then I moved to the Utah Parent Center. And every state in the United States has a parent center, at least one. Some states have multiple parent centers. And there I work directly with families, trying to connect them to transition resources and also some development work, building our programs throughout the state and trying to identify partners that could help us with that work. But as I got into the transition work, it really was a blessing for me because Jackson, I think he was probably around 20 at the time. The transition to adulthood starts as early as 14 years old and goes up to about 22, 26. And really, it can even start earlier than 14 if your child, is like showing signs that they're ready to move on to some of these next ages and stages. And the piece that I loved about the program that I helped to create for the Parent Center was this holistic approach. We looked at every aspect of life. So employment, school, what happens when that school bus stops coming? What about safety and security? Things like guardianship, conservatorship, power of attorney. It's kind of scary language to families who are not used to dealing with the legal ease of our system. What about understanding the different types of Medicaid, whether it's healthcare or waiver systems in your state? What about putting together a special needs trust? And what about like even employment? If your child can make toast, that's an employable skill.
Yeah.
And I love to help parents get out of their own way, meaning there's this limiting, we want to keep our kids safe. We want the best for them. We want them to have a full life. But how do we do that when we see kind of sometimes this bubble that we live in with disabilities? And so it's teaching parents about high expectations. Let's have high expectations for our youth and for our loved ones and for our adult children with disabilities. But let's also have that dignity of risk. Let's also do it in a way that is a good fit for them. I look at Jackson, and as we have worked on his person-centered planning, or Jackson, what does life look like for you in 5 years? Where do you want to live? And he always says with me, and that's great. But I have to show him and help him see a vision of possibilities because
Yeah.
I think even sometimes our loved ones might be limited in what they think they can do. And hey, look, wow, I can do this new thing.
Yeah.
So that's been very
That's
rewarding
that's the
professionally.
whole name of the podcast, Conquering Your Clownfish. The
Yeah,
clownfish being
true,
us as
true.
caregivers in being able to overcome our own mental roadblocks on what is possible for our loved one. So this is a perfect segue into where your background, personal and professional, and the vision for CaringTide came together. And so where really the idea behind CaringTide came was, and again, CaringTide being a disability planning company that serves families entrusted with a loved one with a disability. The background came from when Andrea actually asked me a question that honestly stopped me in my tracks. My background has been that of a financial professional, certified financial planner for the last 22 years, and have served a myriad of different families in all different stages and walks of life. I have had experience up to that point working with families that have a loved one that has a special need, but really through the lens of financial planning. And so this question that Andrea asked me was, she said, Brady, what will happen to Nash and to Cooper when we are no longer here, when we are not their caregivers? And my first thought was, we've saved money and they'll have money and, it's going to be fine. And she said, that's not what I'm referencing. Like, hey, thanks. You've done a great job in financial planning, but that's not what I'm asking. She said, no, like, truly, who's going to take care of them? And how will that work? Because they are so dependent on us. And my immediate response was, well, Brinley, their older sister, who at the time was like 15 or 16, I said, Brinley's always said she wants to take care of her brothers. She's like just a loving person, and that'll be great. And Andrea said, well, Brady, Brinley's 16. And when this happens, she'll have a family of her own. How do we know that she won't have her own child that has a disability? How do we know that her husband is going to be on board with this? How do we know that Brinley will even be in a place to be able to do this? And that got me thinking. And so I started to look throughout our state. We're located in Utah, for an individual or a company that could really help us, not just with this big overriding question, but with all aspects of disability planning, from IEPs to, hey, Nash is going to be 18, and how does that work exactly with things like guardianship and all of these questions that are just pressing on us as families. And I could not find somebody to help me with this. I found individuals that had experience in certain aspects, very siloed, but I could not find a company or an individual that could truly be our disability planner. And so I searched outside of our state and could not locate anybody even across the nation. And that's really where this idea came, in saying, I know families need this. And as I actually visited with other families and asked them what they were doing, they said the same thing. They said, we have no idea. Can you help us? Do you know anybody? And I thought, okay, this is an opportunity. So I knew with my financial planning lens and my experience that definitely is an integral part of the disability planning. But I knew that there were other aspects of this that were just as important, in fact, even more important than what I was able to bring to the table. And that's when I started looking for a partner, for somebody that has the expertise, that can truly walk the walk and talk the talk with the disability planning side. And that's where I met Jennie. And so fast forward now a number of years, I could not be more happy and more thankful to have Jennie as our director and a key integral piece in the company of CaringTide, and just so thankful for the partnership. And that's ultimately what brings us together today.
Yeah, and the other thing that I love about our partnership is you do have that financial planning background side, and then I have all of the family services and estate planning side. And both of us are chartered special needs consultants. So that means that we have extra training, extra education to help us better serve families, because there's so many great attorneys out there, there's great financial planners, there's great nonprofits out there. But really, to be able to bring all of these services under one roof and really help families find their next right step. And families, I love to call them mama bears and papa bears, because
Yeah,
when you have a child with a disability, you are going to go to the mat for them,
that's
and you
right.
are going to try to find the resources for them. But the actuality of life is we are all so busy.
Yes.
And so we have those other responsibilities outside of caring for our loved ones, and sometimes we need help. And that's where Caring Tide can really come in to be your guide and your Sherpa, if you will, to help families find their next right step and to be there with you every step of the way. And as we've created this program together and tried to build a service that would really fit the needs of families, we've been able to mesh our two personalities and our two backgrounds to really reach every aspect of care for a family. And I think about some of the families we've served over the past
Yeah.
year, and really it's been interesting to meet every family where they are
That's right.
and to
And a
understand.
myriad of
Yeah,
different families. I mean,
yeah,
one thing that I would add before we share about some of those families is something that was important to Jennie and I, is we didn't want it to be specific to one state. We wanted to be able to help families across all 50 states. And so we've positioned, and I am actually licensed as a financial advisor in all 50 states, and we're positioned to serve families in all 50 states. And ironically enough, here we are a year later. We have many more families outside of Utah than we do inside of Utah, and that model's working really well.
Yeah. In fact, I'll add too and piggyback before we share about families. Some families will ask me, well, Jennie, you're in Utah. How can you help me in Alabama or in Kansas? And what's great about what I do is that because the disability system is structured in such a way with the laws in our country, and my background, my knowledge, my education, I'm able to help that family find the next right step in their state. And while programs like Medicaid are specific to a state, I'm able to source that information for families, get the names and numbers for them to connect with, help them cut through the red tape. And really, it's that learning curve. Because I know after my husband and I get done working every day and we are making dinner, or, well, my husband makes dinner. I'm really blessed that way.
You're lucky.
I know, I know. I did it for like 22, 25 years and I'm retired. I like to say I'm retired
I
and he
like
likes to cook.
that.
So we shifted responsibilities. But,
That is awesome.
we do dinner and then we're tired. And the last thing I want to go do is a deep dive on Social Security. And so if I had a Jenny that could just send me the sheet and say, here's your first step, here's your second step, I'm going to work with you on step 3 and 4, and then we're going to make it happen on step 5.
Yeah.
That would be amazing to me. And so that's what I really love, is to meet a family where they are, help them find their next right step. And it could look different for every family. When I create a disability planning map for them, it might have things like sibling support. It might have sourcing adoption because they want to adopt another child. It might be help me understand guardianship, or if you're in California or another state that really focuses on conservatorship, it could be that. Maybe it's helping them find adaptive baseball or soccer. It really is specific to your family, and it's not just that one thing. We'll do it all. We'll help you create a map that addresses every area of life that you're impacted by with the disability.
Yeah, you said something that is such a strong visual to me, and that is you're a Sherpa, you're a guide for families. And really that's the responsibility we take on ourselves, is we know that our families in the disability community are summiting a mountain. Like they're working up this mountain and they have a heavy pack that they're carrying, and sometimes they have no idea how to get up the mountain or where to go, etc. Truly, we are that Sherpa that helps lighten that load, take that pack and show them exactly step by step up that mountain, and we go up that mountain together. And so this has actually been really rewarding to work with these families. We've had a number of families, when they see the map that we have created for them and when they engage with us and hire us as their guide, as their coach, they say things like, I feel like a weight is relieved off of my shoulders. I feel like I finally have peace of mind that I have not had for decades as I've been on this journey. And I know that I'm going in the right direction. And that's exactly what the original vision of CaringTide was. So it's fun to see that come to pass.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it really, families are nervous. They don't know me. They just know that they like my message and they like what I'm about. And they know that I have that lived experience and that professional experience. But it is rewarding to get the feedback later saying, I'm so happy that I partnered with you. I was nervous because I didn't know what I didn't know, and you've helped me find my next right step. And that makes me feel good that I've cut some of the frustration and some of the stress out of their lives so that they can go deal with the meltdown. I can't come to their house and solve the meltdown, at dinner time that night, but I can sure give them behavioral resources. I can connect them with other things that will soften and make life a little bit more easy, a little easier for them.
Yeah, I remember, in fact, there's been a couple of families that we're in the process of serving as we speak, that when we originally met and we went through an initial discovery call, they really had their ducks in a row, and like they were on top of it. And in fact, they show us their book and their binder and everything that they have, but then they ultimately say, I still want to engage and I still want to be able to hire you guys as our coach and our guide. We fast forward a couple of months and they say, holy smokes, I didn't know about this, or this has been so helpful to get through that. And so even those families that we've found that really have done a great job in planning are still finding value. So it's been rewarding. Let's talk a little bit on, maybe share a couple of case studies or specific examples of families. Any that come to mind for you, Jennie?
Yeah, the thing that's been, it's really warmed my heart is to see that we can serve families at any age and stage. So I work with families who have a brand new diagnosis. Maybe it's a 3-year-old little guy that has Down syndrome. But maybe it's somebody who is in elementary school and they are really trying to navigate that IEP. I remember being there, when I wanted to retain Jackson for second grade and going toe to toe with the district and trying to structure the IEP in a way that would really serve him, but it's also based on data. Because parents are so passionate about it, but they also have to understand the IEP system and how to be a partner in the process. So working with those families, but also families that are going through transition. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I only have 2 more years of school. What will happen when that school bus stops coming? And so really putting a plan in place and starting to look at that person-centered planning a little more closely to help them figure out, okay, do we want to have my child graduate? Do we want to have them go to post-high? Do we want to start engaging with vocational rehabilitation? There's all these different pieces that you have to kind of figure out. And also that really heavy piece of, do I get guardianship?
Yeah.
When there's this mental shift that it's controlling or taking away, and some people really need that extra support. But really, when we talk through it and families let go of that, maybe supported decision making or power of attorney might be the best route to go. So helping families really figure that sweet spot out for them. And then also just a very tender scenario that I'm working with several families where we're looking at the end stage of life for mom and dad. And we've done such a great job caring for our loved one, and now it's getting real. What's going to happen when mom's been diagnosed or dad's been diagnosed with something where the end is coming? And do we have everything in place so that we can leave this precious soul that we've been entrusted with set up in a way that they're going to continue to flourish? And that is a beautiful thing, is to help families sleep well at night and to help them answer those really heavy, tender questions. That's been
That's
special.
That really was a scenario, one family in particular, where one of the caregivers, the mom, has actually been diagnosed with a very severe and serious illness. And to be able to help this family not just cope with this reality that they are facing, but really get the planning and make sure that everything is in place for the father and for their son. And so getting to know their son, he's just an awesome, awesome individual. But my heart absolutely goes out to this family, and I'm super thankful that we were able to connect and meet with them, because it is creating a lot of peace of mind for them, but it's also creating a clear path on how things will be, because this is a reality. And I think as we visit with families, that's the most common thing that we find, and the most pressing item is when families really face that reality of saying, what will happen to my loved one when I'm no longer able to be here to be their caregiver? Who's going to do this for them? And that is a fear I know that families feel oftentimes from early stages, even when they're toddlers or just their early youth or teenagers, but it becomes a reality because we all are facing that question in one way or another. I'd love to hear, Jennie, maybe another example of a family that you would see that you have served that you feel like may be a good example to share with our listeners.
Yeah, I can think of two other scenarios that I want to make sure families know about. One is, some families will sign up with us for a specific reason. They either need to get guardianship or they need a special needs trust or whatever it is they're facing. But then as we dig into their story through our onboarding process, where I'm spending, an hour and a half to 2 hours with them, really digging into every aspect of life, we actually identify some other needs. So whether it's needs for the parents, maybe there's some therapy resources that they really need to get a handle on, or maybe they're dealing with their own trauma of either their own life or trauma with some significant healthcare experiences with their little one. So that's been really interesting too, is when you're navigating the world of disabilities, it's really layers There's the initial diagnosis, but then there's all the pieces that come with it and all of these different threads that you can pull. I once saw a visual of this little circle of Jacob in the middle. And then shooting off from Jacob, there were all of these other little threads and circles for healthcare. And over here were all these other threads and circles for education. And up here was community. But the whole sheet was covered with little circles and threads from everything that stems out from Jacob, right? And that's how it is for all of these families. It's not just one isolated issue. The other thing that I really would love people to know is while I'm really good at what I do, I'm very humble that I don't know everything, but I know enough to get you going on your next right step. And one conversation that I love to have with families is that reality check. I had to have that with myself. There's nothing I can do to remove extra DNA from Jackson, my guy. But and there's some ethical things there. Would I want to? Because we've been on this journey and we've been blessed in a lot of different ways that other families who have typical children, they'll never experience what we've experienced and learn the lessons and have gained that life experience in the way that we've learned it. They're going to learn it in a different way. But I have to be real about what my situation looks like. And so as a disability planner, I get to look at the whole picture, and I don't have that same intensity because I'm not in the day-to-day. And so it really gives me a clear picture of directions you can go and opens up possibilities and doors for families that maybe they didn't see, or maybe they haven't thought about it in quite the same way. I'll give you one example. I was working with a family and they are awesome. They have their ducks in a row. They've done a lot of research. They're getting their child on the next right step. But there was some specific issues tied to waivers, Medicaid waivers in their state, that they were not utilizing in the best possible way to maximize those benefits. And they really had to shift their mind about the way that they thought about Social Security and Medicaid and nonprofit resources in their state. And once we were done with that educational piece, they were able to shift the way that they thought about it into a planning piece, thinking, okay, I can layer all of these pieces together to try to create a more beautiful and more solid safety and security net and picture for my loved one. And that was great to see, that even the parents taking the next step forward on their planning and the way that they're putting their plan together.
I think that's a great example. And Jennie is definitely being very humble. I will share an insight from my perspective. I actually did a nationwide search for a director for CaringTide and somebody to come on as a partner with me in the work that we're doing. I interviewed over 40 individuals nationwide that have the credentials and background of a disability planner that I would be looking for as a director. And I didn't find anybody that was even close to Jennie. And so it took me a while to convince her to leave the great opportunity that she had. But now, fast forward over a year now since we've been at this. This has just been a truly tremendous journey, and I am in awe when I watch Jennie work with the families through the family support services that we're providing, because this is honestly exactly what I always needed, and what Andrea and I always looked for is exactly what Jennie is providing. Oftentimes we do get a question, though, in particular when it comes to the financial planning side, where we'll meet with a family and they'll say, I have a financial planner. I would say roughly 1 out of 4 families that we work with will say, I have a financial planner. I love my financial planner. How does that work in working with CaringTide and doing my disability plan if I have a financial planner? Or another one would be, I have an attorney. And the answer to that is it works wonderfully. We work harmoniously. We work seamlessly with existing professionals. That is a core attribute, a core principle that we have, is we're not here to replace or to say what's good or what's bad and who's good and who's bad. We work harmoniously together with your financial planner and with your estate planning attorney to make sure that your plan is up to speed and doing exactly what it needs to be done. And then there's others, like I say, roughly 3 out of 4 of the families that we meet with don't really have a solidified financial advisor. In fact, particularly, they don't have anybody that is specializing in special needs financial planning. Ironically enough, we've never met with somebody that their financial planner has the CHSNC designation or specializes in special needs financial planning. But we meet with those families, and then it's just a very natural fit, and they finally have those Sherpas to be able to guide them up the mountain per se. So this has been really fun. I've really loved this work thus far.
Yeah, it's been fun to meet with families across the country and really see what they're trying to navigate. And the other piece that's been really rewarding is maybe I find a family that might not be the best fit for our program, but I still love working with them because I try to leave them in a situation that's better than when they started talking with me, when we do our discovery call, and really figuring out where they are and if our program is a good fit for them. I always try to leave them with resources and help because I've been that mom, fresh out of college, fresh with this little guy that was struggling and just skin was bleeding and screaming and didn't have any language. And I wish somebody would have told me. And so I wanna leave people in a situation where they have more resources than they had before. And so that's another passion of ours is we want every family in America to have this information.
That's a core belief of ours. Absolutely. That vision is to give every single family in America entrusted with a loved one with a disability the opportunity to get the planning they need and they deserve. That's the mission, that's the goal, that's a vision of CaringTide. And so right before we wrap up here, I'd love to just share, some of our listeners may be wondering, well, how does that work exactly? And so I would encourage you to go to our website, CaringTide. You'll click on the services and process tab, and you will see exactly how our services work. And so at a very high level, we offer every family an opportunity to do an initial consultation. We call this a discovery call, where this is a 30 to 40-minute conversation where we just get to know you. You get to know us. We provide you with an idea of what this might look like if we were working together and what value you might receive from that. This is no cost. It's a complimentary consultation just to give you an idea if this might be a good fit and to give us a good idea if we may be able to help you. Those families that choose to onboard and partner with CaringTide, we would then schedule a 90-minute onboarding conversation. And this is a deep dive where we will go into all aspects of your family's plan and current situation with your loved one, as well as all of your family that are part of your family, everybody that's part of your family. And then from there, we would create a map. And this is the roadmap that is going to guide the work that we're going to do over the coming months. From there, we would have monthly cadence meetings where we would be working and tackling those projects and those things that need to be taken care of. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful synergistic relationship that is an ongoing thing and something that families really, really benefit from. It's been awesome.
Yeah, and I would add one other piece. We really try to focus on these three core anchors of planning. So there's the estate organization piece, there's the financial strategy piece. How much do I need to retire? And how much do I need to make sure my loved ones are taken care of? Those are the two biggest questions that families always have. And so in our financial strategies month, when we're working on that, we help you answer those questions and really put a plan together for that. And then the last piece is that family services piece. And it really can be whatever your family needs to focus on, including other members of the family, not just the loved one with a disability.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, Jennie, this has been a lot of fun. Just as we've been talking, I keep thinking to myself, there is so much good that we can share and amazing things that I want to share, but I know we're running out of time here. So I think we should probably do a part 2 or even a part 3 of some of the work that we're doing with CaringTide.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome. Okay, my friend, great to see you. Thanks for being a guest on the show. Can't wait to see what the future holds.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conquering Your Clownfish. If you liked what we discussed on the podcast today and want to continue the conversation, please visit us at conqueringyourclownfish.com. And please don't forget to subscribe.